Now, I know you don't like to appear on television very often, and I really appreciate your, taking the extra effort to be with us tonight on Wednesdays at, no, to be with us tonight at 9 on Thursdays, because today is Thursday, and the show is called Thursdays at 9. Now, since we're taping the show at 2:30 in the afternoon of Thursday, perhaps we should call it the 2:30 at 9 on Thursday's show. But you're turning your head away, and you're starting to scratch, and that usually means to me that you're, getting a little bit nervous about responding to some of our thoughts on the media and corruption, yeah, in both Montana commercial and public broadcasting. And Senator Burns, Conrad Burns, the Republican, and former radio broadcaster, and he's managing to accumulate some millions of dollars that are going into some research center at Montana State University, of which most of us know very little. And given the state of the public broadcasting media and the private sector electronic media in Montana, I doubt that we're going to find out very much about it, because it's a collusive effort, little collusion between, Montana State University and a little collusion from the University of Montana, and then you got a nice deal, and nobody complains, and nobody says anything critical about it. I mean, for heaven's sake, what could be wrong with Senator Burns getting $500,000 from United States West, U.S. West? And what could be wrong with getting another $500,000 from the late Bob Magnus, who's generally just jilting you out of money when he sends you the cable bills for Telecommunications Incorporated. But how many others saw that piece in the Missoulian on the 7th of March, in which the national newspaper, the National Journal, headlined their article, "Calling All Donors, Buttering Up Senator Burns." Now, you have to remember that Senator Burns has made it a point to head up the subcommittee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation Communications in the United States Senate. A very, well, I didn't know you were going to just be that, poorly interested in this material as to just kind of close your eyes and lie there. I know it's depressing. It's depressing to me. It's depressing to me. Yes, it is. And, well, we'll just have to see how it goes. And I'd like to see you wake up a little bit, But anyway, the headline says that donors to this Burns, and I find it a little bit less than modest that a man who's still alive and doesn't have much of a reputation of any kind suddenly has a building named after him. Well, Montana State University knows which side its bread is buttered on. I suppose if I managed to come up with a $500,000 donation to Montana State University, why even I, the blacklisted and demonized independent reporter, would get a building named after him. What would I get? Probably some, garage facility, the Coyle parking garage. But, this is serious business. This outfit, the National Journal, has questioned United States Senator Conrad Burns' role in raising money for a telecommunications center named for him at Montana State University, raised this money from firms that have business before his Senate subcommittee. Now, in some cases, National Journal said, telecommunications companies that have donated, by the way, folks, stay tuned because we're going to leave this gem of legal corruption after a few minutes and go over to the union electioneering and organizing campaign at KECI TV. God knows those folks need all the help that they can get hauling that equipment around and living on, minimum wage, and in some cases, depending on the situation, perhaps less. And of course, the University of Montana feeds into that system just as well by not really being a university and not having its journalism school heard from as to what is ethical, ethics, ETHICS. All right, back to this Conrad Burns multi-million-dollar telecommunications center and the donors who have enjoyed favorable treatment from Senator Burns when they appear before his committee. Among the donors, U.S. West Foundation, $500,000 over 3 years. Bob Magnus, late chairman of the board of TCI, $500,000 in 1996 before he died. These companies were willing to talk to the National Journal about the donations, but Montana State University and its fundraising foundation refused to release a list of donations, saying they had no obligation to do so with private funds. Well, I would imagine TCI's money and U.S. West Foundation's money is, some of that money is mine. I help them get it by paying it to them month after month, A number of donors to the Burns Center also have made big PAC committee contributions to Burns's campaign committee since 1993, the National Journal reported. U.S. West PAC has given more than $12,000. TCI's PAC has donated more than $8,500. Again, National Journal article, headline, "Calling all donors," right on the magazine cover with this teaser, "Buttering up Senator Burns." While Burns' unusual role doesn't appear to violate Senate rules, campaign finance experts say that lawmakers who have cozy relationships with outside groups risk conflicts of interest. And in an aside, folks, let me say that several years ago when I made an effort to attend some kind of a telecommunications advisory conference in Helena, it was conveniently held behind locked doors at U.S. West headquarters in Helena, and I kind of had to bull my way through the security guards to say, well, wait a minute, this is a public meeting, public funds being expended on this meeting. These people, they're just filled with hubris, arrogance. They just, and it extends right on down to local operation of, our erstwhile public TV stations who have been so busy raising money in the last week or so. It's a little, they aren't up front. They don't tell folks who are watching and listening that there are controversial issues of public importance in the First Amendment that they're not dealing with. And their way of dealing with them is by ignoring them and pretending that some of us out here in TV land, yours truly included, are just people who will always be, carping about something. There's no willingness on their part. They're just, they're just about the university's business and getting a salary to boot. On more than one occasion, the Journal reported, Burns has gone to bat for companies that promote or financially support the Burns Center at MSU. And Burns's press secretary, Matt Raymond, told the National Journal that Burns does approach potential donors on the center's behalf because of his contacts, but that center officials do the actual fund solicitation. So who are those Burns Center officials? Who are they? Do they get paid? What are their names? Who hired them? And why is there so much secrecy at the Montana University system, including the regents? I mean, I guess it starts with when a governor of a state like Roscoe, in this case, you can promote kind of some kind of an ethos of secrecy, and I think in the university's situation, it starts with a governor who doesn't believe that his deliberations with people seeking appointment at the Board of Regents, perhaps equal in importance constitutionally in this state, Roscoe chooses to hold these interviews with public figures behind closed doors, and I don't get that. But I guess he's a good role model, because then you have foundations who refuse to give out any information whatsoever. Where's the money going, and what for? What for? The Burns's press secretary says that Conrad is proud that the facility bears his names. And let's see, he says it's involved in promoting distance learning, teaching teachers how to use technology in classrooms, and putting in place degree programs in which students can participate by computer. Anyway, so there's that. Of course, I've been watching a lot of the fundraiser for public television in the last week, and a lot of it has been silly, and I've seen some folks up there working the telephones who I know to one degree or another, and for whom I have a lot of respect. But I think that they volunteers that help out are not. They don't understand that they're themselves not getting the full picture, and I think that I've seen some false advertising, false promotions, misleading promotions during this fundraiser, and I don't think that's right, and I don't think that a school of film at Montana State University, or any of its schools and departments, or the journalism school at the University of Montana, that it has an ethical obligation to be considering modes of telecommunication, and whether things like this are ethical or appropriate. I mean, it's just another field. I mean, if you have a field of science going on, and one scientist is doing his preparations in one way, another scientist comes along and says, well, I think there's a better way of doing it. Does that second scientist just keep his mouth shut and let the erroneous action go forth? We don't have many people in the university system that are willing and strong enough to step up to the plate and say, we got some problems here, folks. We don't know when you hear people fundraising for Montana Public Television, they give you no information about, well, how many federal dollars go to support the university system public television stations. Just, how much money is that involved? How much money comes from the state of Montana in all forms? How much money do they receive in grants? How much does programming cost? How much does programming cost? What is the salary component? What is the how much does Montana Public Television pay its workers? How many workers there are crossover workers, that is to say, where they're employed by the university system in some fashion, but that they are re-employed or moonlight as television producers, that is to say, is there double dipping that goes on? I think that broadcasters often patronize us and under the guise of we're not interested, or we don't know anything, or we wouldn't understand. They tell us absolutely nothing. They don't tell us about the. They want money, but they won't explain what money they've got now, where it comes from. And I think we're entitled to that information. And I think any time that it's not given, it's another example of arrogance and unfairness, and in violation of the Montana open meeting law. I'm not sure that they weren't on television this past week in Montana suggesting that if I or you would donate $500 to the Montana Public Television university-affiliated stations, that we would get special treatment, that we would get privileges and rights that people who did not donate $500 to the system would not have. And I don't get that. I mean, these are questions, they tootled them along as being, well, tours of the studio, talking to, I guess, important people or what have you. But I mean, I think at a public facility, and particularly something that's a broadcasting facility, these if you show up and want to know how your system is working, and you'd like to see the studio and you'd like to talk to someone, I mean, I think when one takes the time to at least give them a little forewarning and say, I'd like to come in and see how the system goes. I'd like to see your public files. If you shouldn't have to pay $500 to get these, quote, privileges. I find that beyond the pale. I mean, what, do you buy your way into the system? I'd really like a straight answer to that. Is that how you have to get involved, is by buying into the system? And you pay so much and then you get to vote on what the system's going to be like? This is not equitable. This is not appropriate. This is really, diminishes the First Amendment rights of a lot of us. And it's a shame. These schools, MSU and U of M, seem to have a particular nervousness about making their university voices heard. What activity or what discussions in the School of Journalism or the School of Economics and Business Administration? We see that workers at KECI TV are soon going to be holding a union election. 20 years ago, when Montanans for Quality Television, the organization that I helped put together, and intervene before the Federal Communications Commission about inappropriate working conditions and salaries at that same station. And now these folks, all these, that's 20 years ago, and you see how things have improved very little. They're more accustomed to just intimidating people than paying them fairly. They, in my own case, they, when our organization was undertaking a professional inspection of their public records, as we told the FCC about some of the problems and difficulties we saw at that station, staff at KECI began calling around the country, calling around North America, places of my employment or where I had gone to school over the years, and lying when they reached someone, say at Stanford University, where I was a professional journalism fellow, calling up and lying, calling from the station in Missoula, Montana, and saying, this guy, McCarthy Coyle, has applied for a job with us, and we just, I had never applied for a job with anybody. I was their adversary. They were always putting out feelers. I remember a lunch, a pleasant lunchtime, sitting with Bob Precht and his partner, Nathanson, and it was a very polite, sweet, verbal. McCarthy, you're a bright young man. Our company needs people like you. And I was, I suppose, polite enough to let that quote offer go. But they're not interested in unions at KECI. They're not interested in unions at KPAX. They just want to get their license renewed so that they continue printing money. They're associated with networks, multi-billion-dollar network conglomerates, and these folks at KECI and KPAX can't even get beyond minimum wage when people in New York doing the same tasks that they're doing, hauling equipment, heavy equipment around in all kinds of weather, waiting, boxed in by folks, getting their job done. Well, those folks in New York are not making, $4.50 an hour, my friends. And neither should workers here locally in Missoula, Montana, who are trying to engage in a professional technical occupation. This is really a disgrace. But you don't hear Senator Conrad Burns and the Burns Telecommunications Center talking about ethical issues like this, do you? As it is, they're always ripping us off. You know, I mean, here we got you know, those closed captions for the hearing impaired. A lot of us don't notice it. Well, you notice it when you put your you know, your browser box to mute because you don't want to hear the advertising, including some of the you know, public service advertising. You know, these non-cash payola payoffs to government officials. You know, the just to keep them you know, fat and happy rather than mean and sassy. You know, so then they hustle Roscoe over to make a public service ad, and they hustle the Secretary of State, and you know, the only one I guess they haven't bothered hustling is Nancy Keenan, because she seems to be you know, on the alert, pretty steady. But the rest of the guys, including Missouri, and not that some of the messages don't have some information, but it's a good way to make smooth with your government officials, isn't it? Very nice way to, you know, they can't buy that time, they can't afford to buy that time. The station comes along and says, "Oh, Governor, won't you make a PSA with us? You'll look good, we'll put it in our record, you know, and then you won't ever yell at us, will you? Or you won't stand against us if, you know," because what are they doing now? What are they doing now as part of campaign reform? As part of, you know, a federal election campaign reform. It has been put forward that we need to get, you know, the most costly element of the process cut down or eliminated, and we're talking about advertising on the public airwaves. You know, a lot of folks still don't remember that we own the airwaves. The airwaves that you know, KECI broadcasts on, those belong to us. They are licensed to serve in the public interest, convenience, and necessity. When they don't, we point out ways to them in which they can meet the public interest, convenience, and necessity. And here we have a situation where it would be in the public interest, convenience, and necessity to have candidates for public office be able to advertise on you know, these government licensed airwaves, that is to say people licensed airwaves, so that we can hear what they have to say without it costing us you know, more than a small fortune. Why should there be a, you know, a $400 billion cost to democracy? You know, why should money constantly be changing hands? Well, it doesn't have to be, because we could extend free or low-cost advertising airtime on radio and television to candidates for public office. President Clinton has suggested to the Federal Communications Commission that they begin, you know, putting together some regulatory hearings that will address this, and you know, and already over on the other side of Washington, D.C., in the Capitol building, the stick their heads in the muds, the anti-democracy forces of the United States Senate in particular, but the House racing quite closely behind them. You know, so the minute that they heard that the FCC was going to receive some authority from the executive to grant a free and low-cost time to candidates who otherwise would not be able to participate in the electoral process, the minute they heard about this up on the Hill, boy, Trent Lott and all of his cowardly colleagues, you know, the ones that seem without a brain, that's right, you know who they are, they're brain dead. They wanted to they are in the process of trying to, you know, file legislation and pass a law that would forbid the Federal Communications Commission from suggesting to anyone that their public interest obligation be extended to include this kind of political advertising. Folks, if we can't use our own airwaves to advertise our beliefs and our ideas, then there is a real problem. And, you know, folks still want to know about, and I know that you, even as a dog, you want to know whatever happened to the close to $200,000 that the journalism school at the University of Montana got because it promised the federal government. I don't know, the University of Montana, you look back at the Fort Missoula flappadoodle, they don't seem to pay too much attention to ethics. And here's a pretty clear and specific example. A fellow in the University of Montana Journalism School, still there teaching, and applied for a grant from the feds together with, signed off by the Montana Department of Administration, which kind of tracks federal grants to Montana. And this fellow got a grant to, he got special preference, which means he went to the head of the line because he had a good reason for going to the head of the line. And his good reason was that he was going to be doing programming with, for, by, and about women and Native Americans. Let me repeat that. That's a quote from his successful grant application, which saw the arrival at the university of, several new television cameras and recording devices, so that this gentleman in the journalism school could follow through on his commitments and make programming, quote, with, for, by, and about women and Native Americans. Has any of that ever happened? He was going to distribute these programs over the cable system. Has that ever happened? Does the president of the University of Montana know about this? Does anybody care? Or shall we just put this in the dustbin of other, unfulfilled contracts that the University of Montana has glommed onto over the years? It's really, it's when it gets to be First Amendment expression, it's really something to be heartsick about. I mean, the brain takes care of itself, but it's galling when you see that an institution which supposedly prides itself on truth, knowledge, and the search for those qualities really keeps its blind side, to the community, and just basically tells us to get lost. We don't know anything. And they'll be the ones to decide. I can remember a time even when a person came down from the university not so many years ago to city council when the city council was considering the establishment of the public access facility over which you're seeing and hearing this program. And that individual from the university who was telecommunications related, at least academically, voiced opposition to such a facility. Why? Who knows? Ignorance? Jealousy? Communications is something that people are supposed to be working together on, as in communion, community, commune, communications. So it's pretty sad when it doesn't work out and when people forget about whatever ethics they might have ever had. And what else did we have here? Yeah, good luck with the striking workers at, well, they're not on strike yet. They haven't even been unionized yet, but that's something that should have happened, and I should have done more to bring about, 20 years ago when we were roistering around the place. But that's something that the Central Trades and Labor Council, labor constituencies all around Missoula, who count on the rest of the community to back them up when they've got a strike issue on the agenda. You get a lot of folks out to support those union people, those union workers. Now it would be nice to see the union workers who are established and so far so good. They've got jobs, they're in protected situations, well, Dog, what do you think? Is that enough opinionating and punditing for today? I know you don't like me to talk about telecommunications at all, and you put up with it just to humor me, but how's the handicapped access out at KPAX TV? And those, when you see all those credits going to translator stations, like if you watch KECI and KPAX, so we now thank our following translators. They're thanking them because without those translators, which are put up by people in communities themselves and pay for them themselves, you know, the TV station isn't paying for those translators. Citizens are. You know, the TV land is a world of illusion, complete illusion, down to the local level. You know, they don't deliver the news. They don't really have a sense of what it is to do investigative journalism on television, or if they do, they're not allowed to speak to it. But anyway, you've been watching and listening to Thursdays at 9, and we'll be here back again next week on Thursdays at 9, as we will be until we're quit or be killed deliberately. And I want to thank my friend, the dog, for participating in this adventure. And let's get these university public television information squared away. Let's stop the concealment. Let's stop the concealment. Let's just have some information from you folks. That's it. Welcome to Thursdays at 9. Tonight, Thursdays at 9, is presenting The Rush of Gold. My name is McCarthy Coyle, and you're watching Missoula Community Access Television. The Rush of Gold. Alaska, 1974. I am in a canoe on a river. I think it's the Yukon River. There are two teenage boys in the canoe with me. One is in the bow, one is in the stern. I am in the middle, writing in my journal. I have not been well. Sweeper, widowmaker, cries the boy in the stern. I look up from my notebook. I see a tree ahead. It has fallen halfway down, and some of its biggest branches extend over the water. I do not recall why we should have a mast on the canoe, but we do. And although the boys are paddling fiercely, it is too late. The tree strikes the mast, and the three of us are plunged in the river. And the eyes and the mouth of the younger boy, the shining one who has no hair on his body, the one who chants and chortles so handsomely, his eyes reflect my shock. We are at either end of the overturned canoe. We are grasping shoreline brush with one hand, and with the other we are keeping hold of the canoe. The swift current is trying to tear the canoe from our arms. I see my journal floating away. I catch a glimpse of the older boy. He is struggling around a bend ahead of us. He seems to be grasping objects and hurling them, but I am not sure. He is out of sight now. And then my brain shifted, or my memory jump-started, and suddenly I can see the whole journey. I know who the boys are and how we began this journey, why we are here. John is almost 16, Mark is 14, and I am exactly the sum of their ages. I remember once in Manhattan taking them to see the Beatles' Yellow Submarine, but they were much younger then, back when I was a success, before the gold therapy had begun, before the time came when I sometimes wondered if everything which had already happened to me was only imaginary. Before the time when the color had abandoned my vision and everything I saw was all in black and white. And now I remember how much I love those boys and that they do not belong to me. They belong to my sister. The water is very cold, and I can already hear myself, terrified, on a telephone, trying to cough up the words for the drownings of children. I cannot imagine those words. I must not lose these boys. And now I remember the boys arriving from their Catholic home in what our family calls the Poets State, for Dr. William Carlos Williams and Whitman and Ginsberg and even sappy Joyce Kilmer. And I can see the boys standing by my side as I checked out of the Veterans Hospital in San Francisco, where the doctors had injected me with the gold in experimental hope that the colors would come back to my vision, that not everything would remain black and white in my sight. And yes, I can picture the going away party at my brother's home in Berkeley, and how the boys neatly filled my backpack, carved me a walking stick out of hazelwood, and I remember how we spread out our maps and looked at the ways we would be taking, and how we carefully packed the faded snapshot of Jerry O'Mani with Daia 1899 written in pencil on the back, and his only surviving letter, postmarked in the year 1905, postmarked from Whitehorse in the Yukon Territory. And at the going away party, I remember receiving a telephone call from a ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and it was Carol, and I had not heard from her in 6 years. Her radiant voice wavers in and out of the radio waves. I can't be certain if I can hear her saying, "I love you." I can't be certain of her. I hang up. I come out. I ask the boys, "Do you remember Carol, the woman I loved who was a virgin, who had a brother who committed suicide and a mother who had a lobotomy?" The boys remembered. So did my brother and his wife. Everyone at the going away party knew who Carol was, how broken my heart had been, how cruel I had been. Well, that was her on the phone. She's on a ship bound for France. She'll be there in 3 days. She wants me to fly sky high and be on the dock when she arrives. My brother remarks, "Well, she's just like you. She only calls when she knows that what she's asking is impossible." But the boys' faces go slack, wondering if I will abandon them and cancel our journey just for an old flame whom they had met only once. Once, yes, in astonishment, in Greenwich Village. Once, 6 years earlier, in the brownstone on West 11th Street. when they, two small boys, stood there listening as I beat her beauty down with my words. Uh-oh, you virgin queen looking for young poets to pet. But at the party, I laughed, and I told the boys, stick thine fingers into my wounds, oh doubting Thomases. Of course I'm not going to France. We're going to Alaska. Isn't that the plan? And they smiled and cheered. Our teeth are chattering. The rushing Yukon is sucking at our hiking boots, our woolen pants. We are beginning to tremble and shake. Our voices are high with the coldness on our scrotums and the fear in our eardrums. I cry out to the boy I can no longer see, John, 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 John! Are you all right? Are you all right? I hear his voice shouting back, but the words whistle past me. Listen, I say to Mark, we've got two choices. Float this thing downstream till we hit some shore to beach on, or just let the damn thing go and climb up right here while we still can. I say, let her go. And then I remember scoring a blue Chrysler convertible drive-away deal from California to Oregon. Top down and tunes up all the way, and I remember how, along a back road, we discovered a piece of cloth at an old campfire on an Oregon river. A piece of cloth which the boys insisted was a swatch of D.B. Cooper's parachute. And I remember the fruitless,